My sister helped my parents destroy my face. Was she a monster or just another one of their victims? The first thing I remember is the smell. A sickeningly sweet chemical odor that clings to the back of your throat, like burnt plastic and almonds. The second thing was the sight of my older sister, Elena, her eyes wide with what I used to think was concern, but now know was something much more terrifying. Belief. She truly believed that what our parents were doing to me, holding me down as the illegal cream began to sizzle on my skin, was an act of love. In our family, love was measured in shades of white. My parents were obsessed, possessed by a deep-seated hatred for their own heritage. Every summer morning, our routine was the same. Our mom would line us up, me and Elena, and slather our bodies with skin whitener from the Dollar Tree. Crack! A hard slap across the face for every hour we spent playing in the sun. The whiter we looked, the more love we received. I just wanted to be a normal kid. I wanted to play outside without fear, to let my natural curls spring free instead of having them painfully straightened. But my sister Elena, she drank the Kool-Aid and asked for seconds. She was their whitewashed queen, their perfect creation. She set alarms for every 2 hours throughout the night, deliberately disrupting her own sleep. The resulting exhaustion, the dark circles under her eyes, made her look more pale. And her parents didn't see a sick child, they saw royalty. They showered her with expensive dresses and delicate jewelry, praising her for her dedication to beauty. It didn't take long to figure out who the golden child was. If I wanted their love, I had to follow Elena's path. I tried to find other ways, desperate for their approval. I got straight A's, cleaned the house from top to bottom, even gave my dad foot massages. Thanks, honey, they'd say, their eyes distant. But I really wish you worked this hard on getting beautiful pale skin like your sister. For my 16th birthday, the final nail was hammered into the coffin of my childhood. They presented me with a small, unlabeled bottle of hair product they'd had shipped from Africa. It was, for all intents and purposes, a chemical bleach. I spent the rest of the day crying into a teddy bear in my room, the tears making clean streaks through the too light foundation I wore to appease them. That's when Elena came in. She hugged me, and for a second, I let myself hope. I thought she was going to tell me that she loved me for who I was, that our bond was stronger than our parents' twisted ideals. But then she pulled back, her eyes shining with a frightening intensity. Lila, I love you, and I want to help you, she whispered. She pointed to her own face, her malnourished frame, the chemical burns on her scalp from years of straightening. If I can look this beautiful, so can you. She wasn't joking. She genuinely believed that destroying herself was the path to salvation. From then on, I gave in, but only on the surface. I wore foundation that was 2 shades too light and covered my body in long sleeves, not because I hated myself, but because it was easier than fighting. It was the price of a quiet home. Fast forward 6 years, I had just graduated from the University of Florida, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly good. I'd taken up running, spending hours out. My skin had a healthy, sun-kissed glow, and my curls were finally free. I loved it. And my boyfriend, Carlos, loved it too. He was half Puerto Rican, half Italian, and understood the poison of internalized racism all too well. When Thanksgiving came around, I was nervous, but hopeful. I even put on a slightly lighter foundation, a small peace offering to lessen the blow. I showed up at my parents' house holding Carlos's hand, ready to introduce them to the man I loved. The door opened, and I saw a woman who looked like a ghost version of my sister. She was deathly pale, skeletal, her eyes sunk deep into her skull. When she saw us, a horrified shriek escaped her lips. Dios mío, what are you doing to our bloodline? My heart shattered. Carlos instantly squeezed my hand, a silent promise. We got this. Then my mom saw me, saw my healthy skin and curly hair. My love, what have you done to yourself? She screamed, her fingers clawing at my bun, trying to straighten my hair. Her eyes landed on Carlos, and her mouth opened in a grotesque smile. Ah, you almost had me believing this. Monkey was actually your boyfriend, she chuckled. But I understand. You're young, just messing around. My dad grabbed my arm, pulling me inside. Slam! The door closed, shutting Carlos out. He immediately handed Elena a jar of whitening cream. But this wasn't the cheap stuff from the Dollar Tree. The moment it touched my face, it felt like fire. Stop! Get away from me! I screamed, tears of pain streaming down my face. Within seconds, my skin was bubbling, blisters forming as the flesh peeled away. The pain was blinding, a searing agony like my face had been dipped in acid. Through a haze of pain, I heard Carlos on the other side of the door screaming that he was calling for help. I thought surely this would be the moment my parents realized they'd gone too far. But no. My dad tried to wrestle the phone from Carlos through the mail slot. Pain is beauty, he roared. Lila will be beautiful. By the time the paramedics arrived and forced their way in, my eyebrows had been burned clean off. I woke up the next morning in a hospital bed, my face swathed in bandages. Carlos was there, kissing my uninjured hand, calling me beautiful. Then I checked my phone. It was a war zone of missed calls and texts. The first voicemail from my parents was angry, calling me a disappointment. The 10th was my sister, Elena, her voice hollow and defeated, begging me not to press charges. They are our parents, she pleaded. They just want what's best for us. Please come home. I couldn't believe it. Even after this, she was defending them. Carlos sat with me, his face growing darker with each message he heard. "Lila," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "This isn't normal. What they did to you is abuse. It's always been abuse." Hearing him say it out loud, something inside me finally broke. All those years of trying to earn a love that should have been free. All those years of blaming myself. I looked at my bandaged face in the reflection of my dark phone screen. The war for their love was over. The war for my life had just begun. The decision to press charges felt like stepping off a cliff in the dark. The hospital social worker helped me file a police report, and my hands were shaking so violently I could barely sign my own name. The officer who took my statement, a kind, older guy named Ramirez, had these sad, tired eyes. "You're doing the right thing, kid," he said, and for some reason, that simple validation from a stranger almost made me cry. The guilt of reporting your own parents is a bizarre, toxic thing even when they've literally melted your face. My phone was a relentless assault. My mom's messages swung wildly between threatening to disown me and begging me to come home. My dad sent long, rambling paragraphs about family loyalty and how I was betraying my heritage. The irony was so thick, it was suffocating. But the messages that cut the deepest were from Elena. "They're going to take me away if you do this," she texted. "Please, Lila, I need them. I don't know how to live any other way." That one hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew exactly what she meant. When your entire identity is built around pleasing someone, the thought of losing them feels like death. I was discharged after 3 days looking like a mummy from a low-budget horror film. We went straight to Carlos's tiny one-bedroom apartment. It was cluttered and small, but it felt like a fortress compared to the home I grew up in. That first night I completely broke down, the kind of ugly crying that leaves you hollowed out. Carlos just held me, letting me soak his t-shirt with tears and snot, never once making me feel like I was too much. "A part of me still wants them to love me," I whispered to him in the dead of night. "How messed up is that?" The next morning, Officer Ramirez showed up at the door. "We've spoken with your parents," he said, his expression grim. "They're claiming it was an allergic reaction to a normal beauty product." Of course, it was their standard operating procedure: deny, deflect, and paint me as the hysterical, overly sensitive one. The other officer with him asked if I had any evidence of past abuse photos, reports, anything. I had nothing. Who documents their own slow-motion destruction? Panic began to set in. They were going to get away with it. They always did. But then Carlos spoke up. "The hospital has the chemical analysis of the substance on her face," he said firmly. "That should prove it wasn't normal." The officers nodded, and before they left, they served my parents with a temporary restraining order. A small victory, but it felt monumental. The victory was short-lived. A new text from Elena popped up on my screen. "They're saying you're mentally unstable," it read, "that you've always made up stories for attention. They have pictures of you smiling at family events to prove it. They were twisting everything, using our forced happiness as a weapon against me. The case was moving forward, but it felt like my word against theirs." Then, a breakthrough came from the most unexpected place. A call from a number I didn't recognize. "Lila, it's your Aunt Rosa," the voice on the other end said, her accent thick. "Your mother called me, crying about the terrible lies you're telling." My heart sank. "Here we go again. It's not lies, Tia," I said, my voice shaking. "They've been hurting us for years." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then she said 2 words that changed everything. "I know." She told me she had always suspected something was wrong. She'd even found old diaries of my mother's detailing how her own grandmother had done similar things to her: the skin bleaching, the obsession with looking European. The cycle of abuse was older than I was. This didn't excuse my parents, but it was the first piece of context I ever had. And then she offered to testify. A few days later, I was leaving a follow-up appointment with my dermatologist when I saw her. Elena. She was leaning against her car in the parking lot, looking even thinner and more haunted than before. "I've been thinking about what you said," she whispered when she got close, her eyes darting around nervously. "About disappearing. I looked in the mirror this morning and I couldn't recognize myself." I wanted to hug her, but she flinched away. "I can't stay," she said, her voice frantic. "Dad took my phone. They're watching me, but I found this." She pressed a small USB drive into my hand. "It's their financial records from Dad's office. The payments, the shipping info for the bleach. It's all there." Slam! It was the sound of the foundation of their lies cracking. "This could be really important for the case," I said, stunned. "I know," she whispered before hurrying away. "That's why I took it." As I watched her go, I realized the truth. Elena wasn't a monster. She was a prisoner of war, and she had just handed me the key to her own cell. The USB drive was a bombshell. It was years of their secret history laid bare. Regular purchases of illegal, toxic chemicals from overseas suppliers. Mercury, high-concentration hydroquinone cocktail of poisons they had willingly put on their children's skin. I handed it all over to Danielle, the victim advocate from the DA's office. "This changes things, Lila," she said, a new spark of confidence in her eyes. "This is a much stronger case now." The night before the trial, Carlos made us dinner. I looked across the table at Elena, who had been staying with us since she'd run away, and at Carlos, my rock, my safe harbor. For the first time, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't terror: hope. Whatever happened tomorrow, we had already broken the cycle. We had found each other. Walking into that courtroom felt like walking to my own execution. My parents were already there, sitting with their expensive-looking lawyer. My mom was caked in makeup, a fragile mask of composure. My dad stared straight ahead, a statue of arrogant denial. The trial lasted 3 days, a blur of legalese and carefully worded lies. My mother testified that it was all for love, that beauty requires sacrifice. My father played the role of a strict but caring immigrant father who just wanted the best for us. Their lawyer tried to paint me as a rebellious, jealous daughter. "Isn't it true you've always been jealous of your sister's natural beauty?" he asked me on the stand. I met his gaze. "No," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I was jealous that she was willing to destroy herself to earn our parents' love, and I wasn't." That shut him up. But the most powerful moment came when Elena took the stand. She looked like a ghost, her voice a whisper at first. But as she started to speak, describing the years of starvation, sleep deprivation, and the constant pressure to be whiter, her voice grew stronger. When she described how her dad had grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises after she took the USB drive, I saw my mother flinch. Maybe for the first time she was seeing the monster she had married. When the judge was ready to deliver his verdict, I grabbed Elena's hand. The world seemed to stop. "In the case of State versus Mendez," he began, his voice echoing in the silent room, "I find the defendants guilty on all counts." A sob broke from my lips, a sound of pure, gut-wrenching relief. Elena was shaking beside me, tears streaming down her face. Carlos wrapped his arms around both of us. It was over. They were sentenced to 3 years in prison, with probation and mandatory counseling to follow. As the bailiff led them away, my mother looked back at us, and for a fleeting second I saw something that looked like regret in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the same stiff pride she had always worn. The years that followed were a slow, painful, and beautiful process of healing. We moved into a bigger apartment. Elena started taking art therapy classes, rediscovering the person she was underneath the layers of our parents' expectations. I finished my degree, inspired to help others who had been through family trauma. Carlos and I got married a few years later in a small ceremony filled with people who loved me for mess scars and all. Elena was my maid of honor, looking healthy and vibrant, her natural skin tone glowing. 2 years after the trial, our parents were released on parole. My mother started writing letters, apologies mixed with excuses. I wrote back once, a short note saying I was okay but not ready for more. Elena never responded. Eventually, after years of therapy and letters, we agreed to meet our mom in a public place. It was awkward and painful, but it was honest. She cried, apologized, and admitted that she had only passed on the abuse she herself had received from her grandmother. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a form of understanding. We never saw our dad again. 7 years after that terrible Thanksgiving, Elena got married. At her wedding, as I watched her laughing, surrounded by love, I felt a profound sense of peace. Our journey wasn't over. The scars, both visible and invisible, would always be a part of us, but we had survived. My sister wasn't a monster, she was a survivor, just like me. She had been their greatest victim, and in the end, her courage had been the key to setting us all free.